Yo, what's up YouTube? This is Gresnick and welcome back to another reaction video. Today, we're back with another video from Rye Toast. We know how the animatronics were haunted. What do you mean by we? I don't know, actually. So, I'm excited to see what this entails. So, as always, like and subscribe to Rye Toast. And myself, comment down below anything you want me to react to, or in my Discord, Gresnick Studios, which you can join by clicking the link in my channel description. And go to subscribe to my other channel, Gresnick Plays. Now let's get into the video. Rather short one. I don't really know what to say about this video topic so far, so...
Possession is something that is throughout all of Five Nights at Freddy's, but is very rarely elaborated on. We don't really know how it works or why it happens. We just know that it does. That's not necessarily a negative to the series. Plenty of fantasy series I adore deeply
we have no clue.
Truly
well, at
explain
least
the
I
inner
really don't
workings
know
of
how
their
they're
magic.
possessed.
And that's fine. I mean, if I asked you, can you explain to me exactly how Bluetooth functions? You probably I don't know.
I don't
but
know.
you know how to use Bluetooth. And in those magic systems, it's kind of the same way. So, for Five Nights at Freddy's, we don't need to know how possession works. But if we did, we could better understand not only the franchise itself, but every possessed character inside of it. And considering everything we've seen throughout this series, especially some of the more recent entries,
this series has gone on for so long.
I think we can make a specific formula on exactly how possession works in Five Nights at Freddy's. And I'm so confident in this formula, I don't even want to call it a theory. So Slices, put on your aprons, and let's bake ourselves a fact. Now, a great question to get out of the way immediately is, why does any of this matter?
Really doesn't.
Understandably, it's fun
cool
to
know.
just play in the space because we can, and do these theories because we can, but if you're not interested in the aspects of how the universe functions in Five Nights at Freddy's, and you only want to know the lore, it's reasonable to ask why you would want a formula to prove how possession works. But I would argue that knowing that kind of a formula would help you better understand the lore in general. Think about it. If you can know exactly how things are possessed and what's needed to possess them in a franchise, then when you're going throughout the lore and trying to figure out which
it'll
characters
help with the lore
are possessed, you can refer back to this formula and make better informed assumptions about these characters. After all, when we're trying to figure out which animatronics are possessed, which ones aren't, which spirits are still around, it would be incredibly helpful if we could definitively
I don't think we currently know which ones are still technically around.
Doing so would actually be pretty simple. Does this character act weird? Yes. Do they have the required steps for possession as per our formula? Yes. Then they're probably possessed. Not only that, I genuinely think this formula taken to its logical conclusion could better inform us about aspects of the robots themselves beyond possession, like if they're using a mimic AI or not. But before we get too ahead of ourselves,
good point,
there is another question I have to address. I hear you. Don't we already know how possession works? It's Remnant. We've been knowing this since the novels.
Do we know how the Remnant is created?
Remnant does seem to definitively be a part of possession, but not the entire story. Remnant itself doesn't actually seem possessed. Think about stories like
it's just like the energy
and Frailty. Inside of it, there's a heart locket made out of Remnant, and characters use that locket to appear differently, heal people who are dying. Clearly, this is a supernaturally charged pendant, and it is made of Remnant, but it's not possessed. There's not a specific person inside of this locket telling people to do stuff. As important as Remnant is, it's not the only reason things get possessed in Five Nights at Freddy's. After all, there are things that are possessed before Remnant ever enters the picture. Think about the FNAF 1 crew. Children were killed and put inside of these animatronic suits.
That seems to just be like normal possession,
not because the animatronic suits were injected by Remnant. Now, when those suits are melted down, it creates Remnant. That possession creates Remnant. And Remnant can create further possessions, but for Remnant to happen at all, possession needs to occur first.
Yes.
So, if it's not just Remnant, how can we possibly figure out a formula to possession in Five Nights at Freddy's? Well, with repeated examples of it and one statement. The first step in understanding how something works is identifying the examples that already exist, ones that you can prove are real. In other words, to figure out how possession works, we need to go over every definitively proven possessed character in the series. We want as little wiggle room in our variables as possible. So to go over those, we have the FNAF 1 crew, Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy, and Golden Freddy. All 5 of them act in ways that cannot be explained outside of possession, frankly. And the whole series started with the premise of possessed animatronics. Moving on to FNAF 2, the answer is more vague. Many people make the argument that the toys just act that way due to faulty programming. I think it's pretty clear they're possessed, but in the interest of being as clean about this formula as possible, we won't even use the FNAF 2 animatronics, just because there's an argument to make that they're not possessed, except for the marionette. That's gotta be
she's
possessed.
definitely possessed.
That's on the list. Springtrap is obviously possessed. There's a dead guy inside of it, and it doesn't move until after the dead guy goes inside of it.
Weird. He's possessing his own
location
corpse.
are also pretty definitely possessed. Not only do they act in a strange
well,
way
at least Circus Baby.
Like that,
the other ones
entire
could just
point
be
of Sister
super
Location
weird
was to inject them with Remnant, which would make them be
except
possessed.
that fact.
Not to mention the whole situation with forming into Ennard and then Molten Freddy. Speaking of, pretty much every main animatronic in FNAF 6 is possessed.
Definitely possessed.
But to be fair, they're animatronics we've already talked about. Springtrap, who's now Scraptrap, the Marionette, who's now inside of Lefty, the Fun Times, who are now Scrap Baby and Molten Freddy, and the original FNAF animatronics, which I believe in Molten MCI, so Molten Freddy. Now, stop what you're doing and drink bleach. And by that I mean drink GamerSupps X Bleach 1000 Year Blood War collab. It launches at 3
I just
p.m.
got jump
today.
scared
That's
of an
in
ad.
an hour if you're watching this. Code RYTOAST for 10% off your entire...
As I always say, support the people I react to. They're not sponsoring me. I don't give a shit.
Order. And it does support the channel when you do
but
so.
it still goes support these people. I need their content for me to make content.
Which animatronics are and are not possessed. After all, there's just advanced AI in half of them. Like, I don't think any of the Glamrocks are possessed. And
there's no way they're possessed.
There's a good argument to make that they're not.
Sun and Moon are still weird, though, in general.
I just kind of want to leave out most of them, but I do feel fairly confident that there's no good argument that the Blob and Burn Trap aren't in some way possessed by something.
Well, Burn Trap isn't real, probably, but the Blob is because of Ruin.
All of our very definitively possessed animatronics. Like, all of them,
3 of them are the same
no other
person,
explanation besides there's some kind of ghost in there. So, to figure out what's necessary for a possession, all we really need to find out is what all of these disparate characters have in common.
Yes.
But it's not as obvious as you might think, because at first, many people would obviously say, well, they're all robots. And looking at this, those are all robots.
You can also just divvy it down to which ones canonically are either the same animatronic or the same souls. Because technically, you can get all of the traps because they are the same animatronic. Puppet and Lefty, just narrow it down to Puppet probably. Scrap Baby and Circus Baby, just have one of them, probably Circus Baby. And then canonically the rest of the Fun Times, being Ballora, Funtime Freddy and Funtime Foxy, canonically have Remnant injected into them, probably from the FNAF 1 crew. So you can probably just wipe all 3 of those out of here. And then you'll kind of just be left with Golden Freddy, well, just like the 5 from FNAF 1, William Afton, Springtrap, and Circus Baby and Puppet. If you think about it, that is actually all of the characters that are possessed, and the rest of them are just them, but again. Either in melted down Remnant being injected into something, or it's another character that's possessed by someone specifically. Huh, I never thought about that actually. That's neat. Yeah, most of these animatronics are simply the same animatronic, or at least souls.
But that's because I lied to you. In fact, I lied to you for dramatic effect.
What?
And I will do it again. Because I left one crucial character out of this equation of all of these possessed characters. Some of you might have already spotted him. Hey, where's Michael Afton?
Oh yeah, Michael.
This dude gets his body
Michael's
with an
weird, and he's not an
mess of
animatronic,
parts,
though.
And then his corpse is left on the street, and then he possesses himself to stand back
Leftover
up
Remnant.
again. Now you could argue it's because there was
Father
Remnant
like
injected
son.
inside of him when the scooper attacked him. You could argue it's his spirit itself. whatever you want to argue,
you know,
he's not a
good
robot.
point.
So it
What's
can't be
the difference
that it
with
has
them?
to be a robot. So what do they all share in common? Well,
Remnant,
firstly, there is some
or
sort
at
of
least a
spiritual
soul.
weirdness about them. Either somebody died inside them or very close to them, or remnant was injected into them. In some way, spiritual energy was added to this creature. But we know it can't just be that, because of the aforementioned pendant made out of remnant. If an object like that can exist and not be possessed, then it can't just be that adding spiritual energy makes something possessed.
I mean,
there's something else that needs to happen. And frankly, that is where I was kind of stumped. Until Momo submitted a theory about the timeline to my podcast. Look, I say it a bunch. You guys inspire me. What can I say? I have a weekly podcast on this channel called Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast, where I take questions and theories from you guys via email and Patreon submission. And recently, Momo submitted, frankly, a very interesting theory on how Fiona might be trying to replace David by combining a child's soul with the Mimic AI. It's a great read, and I'll put it in the description or comments or somewhere for you to read it. But when talking about it on the podcast, the rabbit hole that I went down led me to realize something. That's the missing link. Not necessarily the Mimic AI, intelligence, any form of intelligence. And that revelation came from a place of recognition, because I didn't come up with that idea. Dr. Phineas Taggart did. The Fazbear Fright epilogues are our main source of information.
I haven't read any of
remnant
these ones
and agony
specifically.
in general, with a different scientist.
I've read a lot of these
studying
books,
each
but
one.
none of those ones.
Of note for today's theory is Phineas Taggart, whose main scientific goal is to understand agony, the energy of the most negative human emotion. He believes that energy would linger on objects near tragedies, and that energy could be collected and manipulated. And he had a hypothesis about agony that would explain what we think haunted objects are. I'm gonna read it out loud. Tell me if it sounds familiar. My work is focused on my hypothesis that you can take a saturation of agony, add any kind of intelligence, even an artificial one, and they will combine together to transmute the energy of emotion into the energy of physical action. This, I believe, is what explains what people call haunted objects. The combination of agony and intelligence. A hypothesis that...
So... that would mean... that... wait, wow. That would mean that the FNAF 1 crew, all 5 of those animatronics, Puppet, Circus Baby, and Springtrap, would be possessed by agony from their deaths. So maybe it's not like a direct possession of that person, it's their agony possessing. That would make more sense, actually. I feel like that... I'm saying it'd make more sense, but this is a freaking series about haunted animatronics that kill people. So that would also make sense why they're so violent. They're possessed by the agony, and then whenever the agony-infused metal gets melted down, it makes remnant, and then William specifically used that to possess the other animatronics, technically. Unless if they are just literally the same animatronic, but like they went through years of weathering. That actually works really well. Yeah, I barely know what agony is since I haven't read any of these books, and I don't think Game Theorist has done like a super duper breakdown on agony, or if I've just missed an episode of Game Theory or something. That makes a lot of sense, actually.
That he proves in the same epilogue when he fills an endoskeleton with the agony of several objects and then inputs in artificial intelligence. What springs to life is the Stitch Wraith, the anti-hero of the rest of the epilogues. Now, we've been talking about possession, not agony, this whole time. But in this book, agony is described as just the energy of the worst human emotion. But Phineas himself says that all human emotions have energy linked to them. It's my long-standing belief that while remnant is spiritual energy melded with metal, whatever that spiritual energy is just another form of agony, but of a different emotion. I think it's likely joy or bliss, possibly love, in some way the strongest positive
But then for our
emotion,
haunted animatronics,
especially with
it's
how we see
specifically
remnant
agony.
with agony in the books. not only does Remnant and Agony sort of neutralize each other, but when approaching a human's memories, Remnant is able to amplify their best and most positive memories. Meanwhile, Agony is able to trap them in their most negative memories. They affect humans in similar but opposite ways.
That's
almost
strange.
Like spiritual energy and agony are two sides of a similar coin. It's probably why in FNAF AR, we collect Remnant while avoiding Agony. The terminology in FNAF AR was always weird because this isn't Remnant, it's not in metal, but this spiritual energy still can exist separate from Agony and separate from metal. So if spirits in this universe are just the emotional energies of the deceased, then I think we have our formula. And funnily enough, it's one that gives Scott a get-out-of-jail-free card in a way.
Yes.
I don't mean to read into an author too much, but I know Scott Cawthon is a very religious man. And the supernatural doesn't jive super well with a lot of different religions. Granted, this is a fictional story, so that's already one thing. But if, in this world, possession is the emotional energy that somebody had left behind, combined with an intelligence, even an artificial one, then it's not like there's actually ghosts, per se, but the emotions of people who have died remaining and manipulating an intelligence that's still there. Our formula to possession is the spirit of someone who's died, combined with any form of intelligence, even artificial. All these robots have some form of programming inside of them.
Yes.
And Michael Afton had only recently fully died. Many studies show that the brain lingers on long past the body gives up. It's entirely possible that when his spirit reattached to his body from the remnant lingering inside of it, it just possessed his own brain, essentially continuing to live. Now that's the formula, but I mentioned earlier that if taken to its logical extreme, we could learn more about individual characters using that formula.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
What do I mean by that? Think about the different behaviors of characters we witness in the franchise. We have characters like Scraptrap, who seem not only fully articulate but planned. It's basically just William Afton. The game even credits himself. Compare that to a character like Bonnie from FNAF 1.
They seem to be fully just
around
Agony and
tries to get into an office to kill the security guard. The whole time it's just moaning and breathing weird, screaming.
That's so this makes this so much more interesting and genuinely makes sense. There's some characters that are far more extremely make extreme amounts of sense now. Like any of the characters that like had a far greater amount of agony kind of stuck around more. And specifically William and Michael, because it's still technically their body with their mind, they technically did just continue flat out living. Also, for whatever reason, Charlie, the puppet, I'm losing my train of thought. The puppet, Golden Freddy, and Circus Baby, for whatever reason, specifically have far more intelligence, while most of the other ones, when I say most of the other ones, I literally just mean the FNAF 1 crew, aren't incredibly intelligent. Which makes sense, since it seems like Golden Freddy, the one you should not have killed, was one of the ones where William went way too far and was very ruthless of his killing. And we know how, Circus Baby, what was her name? My brain, it's fried. God damn, I cannot remember the names. The person that's possessing Circus Baby, their literal body was inside of Circus Baby for a good while, apparently. Or at least we're pretty sure, so that would make sense for theirs. Who knows about Cassidy? Maybe she was flat out spring-locked in the animatronic she was in, or maybe her body was just immediately thrown in there. Who knows? But she is extremely sentient compared to the other ones, along with the puppet being similar. But then, like I said, the original FNAF 1 crew, excluding Golden Freddy, like he just said, don't seem very intelligent. They're just kind of alive. And this also really does make them killing people make sense. Because if they were still children, just flat out children's souls, why would they be just killing random night guards for no reason? This makes more sense, actually. Damn it.
And seizing when it finally gets to the security guard, Bonnie acts animalistic. The marionette even confirms differences like this in Ultimate Custom Night.
The others are like animals.
You're weird. Why are you so sentient?
So why is it that some possessed animatronics seem fully intelligent, while others seem less so? If our combination is spiritual energy plus an intelligence, and all of them have a similar spiritual energy, at least we have to assume so, then the variable here must be intelligence. And looking at our characters, I think that makes perfect sense. The more complex the intelligence of a possessed being is, the more articulate the possession itself becomes. Here's a perfect example. Think about FNAF 1 versus Sister Location. As mentioned, the FNAF 1 animatronics are fairly animalistic. They wander with seemingly no purpose, their movements are jerky, their attacks are erratic, and they never once form together to try to, as a team, take on the Night Guard. They don't even seem to purposely take on the Night Guard. They wander around, and if they see him, they want to kill him. Compare that with Sister Locations, animatronics that are not only fully able to talk to you, but are capable of carrying out complex plans. They work together to form into Ennard to trick Michael Afton into the scooping room to hollow out his body and wear it to leave the Sister Location bunker. That is a very detailed plan specifically made to outsmart the security system of the place they're being held captive in. Just a month or so ago, I made a full theory on how the Sister Location animatronics may have been William's best attempt to replicate the Mimic, which would mean the intelligence inside the Sister Location animatronics far surpasses anything else William had built up to that point, especially the intelligence inside of the FNAF 1 animatronics, who just do a dance like this and then recite a pre-programmed song. The intelligence of the animatronic is of higher quality, and thus its possession is more articulated. And then we have characters like Springtrap and Michael Afton who have human brains inside of them. The most complex intelligence could ever be.
Yes.
Which is why William Afton as Springtrap and Michael Afton as himself are
they also still are flat out themselves.
So I hear you, what then of the marionette? Funnily
and Golden
enough,
Freddy.
This is more aligned with what Momo's initial theory was about. In it, she suggested the possibility that the puppet had some sort of mimic AI inside of it. After all, Fiona was a puppeteer, and there's clear connections between MCM and the puppet. And in this logic, that lines up perfectly. The
that would make
is one
sense,
of the
actually,
most intelligent
and
possessions
fix that
in the
little
entire
thing
series,
I was thinking of
to the point
earlier.
where Ralph the phone guy literally says, "I don't like the puppet, it feels like it's always thinking." And he doesn't even know about ghosts, but even he can tell. This formula works again and again and again, and it's based off of something stated in the books and proved by the examples that we see in the franchise. And if this is true, which at this point I feel like it has to be, we can take this idea and look into other possibly possessed characters throughout the franchise
clicking
and
that
better
wrong.
understand
That button's
if
annoying
they
me.
are or not in fact
You got
possessed.
spoiled what
If
the
they
next
have the
video
materials
is.
and they act strange, we can call it possessed with more confidence now. This formula might crack open a whole new can of worms, and I can't wait to start using it. So, what do you think? I really, truly believe in this formula, and I think it might finally
It works
explain
so
how
well
possession
and
works
fixes
at
how
all.
the possession
But
works.
I want to hear from you. Let me know in the
Scott
comments.
somehow already
Does
came up
this
with
add
this,
up?
and we're just finally
maybe try
discovering
using
it.
this formula on other possessed characters in the franchise and see if it keeps working. Formulas like this only stand the test of time if they're tried over and over again. That's the scientific process in general. Hey, perfect timing. Why don't you use that formula on the character in this video? Are they possessed? Do they have the qualifications? Figure it out. For your fan art featured on the channel, make sure to share it with #ToastTart. And
Nice video, actually. This theory is super good. I think this does genuinely iron out how possession works in this. The level of intelligence contributes to how possessed they are and how aware they are. Like I already said, FNAF 1 animatronics, obviously. He didn't talk about Golden Freddy at all. And I think it's because Golden Freddy, this might fall into the theory of how specifically Cassidy was killed. Because a lot of people believe she was spring-locked by William using the Golden Freddy, and if that's the case, then this would make a lot of sense, because technically, if we're going off of the intelligence thing, the Golden Freddy suit doesn't have an intelligence because it itself is fully a suit. It doesn't have an AI. It either goes on an endo or goes on a person. This is shown with Springtrap in this theory. So this could also make that theory true, which would be disturbing. So as always, if you like the theory, go subscribe to Rye Toast. If you like this video, subscribe to me. And if you want more videos, go subscribe to my other channel, Gresnick Plays. You can also go to my Discord, Gresnick Studios, in my channel description, on both channels, of course, as I finally fixed a join link for that, because I did it wrong. Don't mind me. I am a stupid CRT. And have a good day, night, and afternoon, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.